Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Your webcast is about to begin. Heather, please go ahead.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here today. I am Heather Nevitt. I'm the Editor-in-Chief of Corporate Counsel ALM, and I'm excited to get to kick off our legal operations series with our keynote presentation on Who's Leading What, Transforming Legal Operations Unit into an Internal Partner in Challenging Times. This event today is sponsored by Everlaw and in partnership with Corporate Counsel. So there will be two parts to this keynote this afternoon. The first is my fireside chat with the one and only Susan Hackett on how to get those amazing ideas you have to help run the legal department in front of the Chief Legal Officer, and really how to convince the CLO to make your agenda part of his or hers. She is also going to share with you some proven leadership tips to help you win the support of the entire legal team. And immediately after our chat, the next part will take you into the nuts and bolts of smart collaboration, why creating a shared space matters in disruptive times. That's going to be with Ajay Shankar, CEO and co-founder of Everlaw. It's really going to be an information-packed hour, but before we begin, I would like to quickly go over some basic housekeeping items about the webcast console itself. The event is completely interactive and incorporates social media tools. So you can tweet or directly post information to your Facebook or LinkedIn pages right from the console. Just scroll along the bottom of the screen and click on the social networking widget of your choice. And if you have questions for our speakers today, please enter it in the Q&A box on your console. We'll reserve 5 minutes at the end of each session to answer as many questions as we can. If we don't get to your question, you may receive an email response after the event. So our first part today is going to be with the lovely Susan Hackett. Susan is the CEO of Legal Executive Leadership, a law practice management consultancy she founded in 2011 after serving for 22 years as the Senior Vice President and General Counsel of the Association of Corporate Counsel. Susan is a recognized leader in the legal profession, reviewed as among the most knowledgeable experts on in-house practice and legal operations. She is a founding leader of the value movement in law and is widely recognized for her creative and visionary approach to re-engineering law departments and legal practice service delivery. Her career-long focus has been to help general counsel and their teams, including those who support and provide services to them, to improve their ability to deliver measurable results to their clients. And last but certainly not least, she is a regular thought leadership contributor to Corporate Counsel. So welcome, Susan. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to talk to you, even virtually like this, and obviously on a topic with so much relevance to the times we live in, as well as hopefully the people on the phone.
Absolutely. And I know you have so much to share with everybody today, and we're going to be short on time probably, but go ahead and set the table for what you will discuss and why this topic is so important right now.
Yeah, this is one of those topics. I go back to what it is that your lead slide says, that it talks about. We're talking about leadership in a time of disruption, and the first question is, which disruption? I mean, even before this pandemic, there are so many people out there who were struggling with the variety of ways that the things that we know that we've always done may not be working now, and certainly may not be working well in the future. So this disruption is something that's ongoing, and now we've got another whole layer of stuff on top of it all with the pandemic crisis and people working from remote and businesses in their own kind of disruption in terms of whether or not they understand their course forward. So this is a relevant time to have this conversation, but there's also a particular sub-issue that we really wanted to address here today, which is that for so many of us, we're all recognizing the disruption. We recognize the need for leadership. But this isn't what a lot of general counsel have been great at, figuring out how to work with their ops teams, or ops teams figuring out how to work with their general counsel to engage him or her in that ops agenda, which can start to make the team more agile, or start to make the team more responsive or more efficient or more capable of working during these times of disruption. So this topic is so important right now in figuring out how it is that with all these great ideas that ops people have and all these rising practices out there, we're able to actually get the folks who can empower us to make decisions and put budget behind it and get teams working on it, how we're going to get them involved in the work with us in the trench.
Right, and I think the issue is with all this ingenuity, rising popularity, and talent we have going on in the legal ops community, it really is innovation at its finest. Why isn't there both more ops progress and more transformational change within the legal department?
You know, it is the incredibly frustrating part of all this, because at one point in time, and when I first started working on this way back, as you noted, I've been banging my head against this wall for quite a while. There were a whole bunch of reasons why it wasn't happening. And we tried to attack all of those kinds of reasons with all kinds of tactical responses. Was it just a question of lawyers not being educated about the options? Was it an insufficient budget and gee, there's never enough resources? The costs that outweigh the perceived benefit because it wasn't really proven what the benefit looked like? On and on and on. And there's a whole list of things there. And at the end of the day, you have to kind of look at it and say, well, I'm sure all of those factors played in. But after a while, and especially after we saw the last time we had an economic crisis, and we saw people trying to come out from behind that, we started to see a lot of changes in the marketplace. Maybe not changes that changed everything for everybody, but that issue of lawyer ignorance was no longer out there. People recognized the problem. They all said, oh, yes, we do need these better practices, these technologies, these opportunities. But they still weren't doing it. Or they'd say, well, we now have a budget, but what are we going to spend it on? And there'd be 47,000 committee meetings, and people couldn't come to consensus about where it was they should dedicate their resources. And even though there were tons of ways we could make the case for all kinds of ops improvements, and most of the people in the department recognized them, even if they didn't really want to do it, that still wasn't happening. So, what's the problem, right? What is it if you now, have knocked down a lot of those impediments that we used to live under, and they're now no longer the case? Why can't we get people to do what it is they need to do?
Yeah, it does seem like the factors are all kind of there, right, to succeed. Everybody's on the same page in what they want the desired results to be. So why do you think it's not working seamlessly? What are the hurdles that are in place?
Change is hard. It's just that simple. It's just change is hard, and especially for lawyers who are not risk takers or who don't have a long history of being the innovators in the way that they do their work. And they've got a whole lot of background in training and education and in the places they've worked, especially since most of them came out of law firms where this isn't a priority. Change is just not an easy thing. And so a lot of what we have to look at in this environment is what will drive the change that everybody knows is going to be necessary, but no one seems quite willing to just pick up and get done. So as the mug says, it's time to begin. What is the first thing you need to do in order to get that begin motion going? And I'd suggest to you that it's go to the CLO. It's got to be a top-down effort. People in the ops team are placed in different kinds of companies in different positions. Some of them have easy access to executive leadership in the law department. Some of them are many layers down into the department's infrastructure, and they may be reporting through a number of other people before they would ever get to the CLO. But I'd like to suggest, and that's really the focus of our talk today, that if the CLO is not only aware of the need for change and supporting the need for change, but actually in the front line and demanding it and working directly with the ops team to see that change happen. It doesn't matter how many good practices you've got, and it doesn't really matter whether or not there are a ton of ways that people could do things better. They simply won't get it done.
Yeah, and from talking to chief legal officers and GCs, that's what I do for a living, and you being one in your past life, we know what's important to those people, right? But how does that connect to an ops strategy? Why should ops be a priority for them? I mean, traditionally, ops are the nuts and bolts with running the legal department, which is not where CLOs, especially today, and in larger departments, devote their time and attention. They want to be focused on business strategy and collaboration. So, for legal department leaders are asking, kind of what's in it for me? What is their interest in personally thinking themselves on aggressively moving this ops agenda?
Yeah. Well, and if you look at that CLO DNA issue that was on the last slide as a concept, this is really where it comes down to you as an ops person or your team as an ops team being able to give the CLO the key to all of these kinds of things that they are most interested in being able to demonstrate within the C-suite. So let's stop for just a second and talk back about what it is that most CLOs think of as their job when they first come in-house or they first have their first CLO role. And most of them are still coming into that role from the role of being a practicing lawyer who's an incredible expert in some area or maybe several areas of law and who may have had some wonderful successes. But now they are in charge of running a corporate function, which is called the legal department. Right? It just like every other function in the company, those corporate functions require from a CLO the kinds of performance and the kinds of command that they have traditionally not had any experience with, and that now when they sit down in the C-suite with their peers from other corporate functions who are all explaining what it is that their budgets are doing to goals right now and goals to budgets and how it is that performance is running in these areas and where all the work is and where the rising challenges are and everything else, the CLO can't even tell you how many matters are in front of the legal department at the current moment, or which outside firms are doing what work, or how their own attorneys are doing certain kinds of projects. They really don't have that command, nonetheless, the ability to demonstrate their performance. So who are the ops teams? They are the key, right, to giving this CLO the kinds of skills, as well as the data, as well as the demonstrable kinds of performance results that allow the CLO to become the corporate executive and not just the legal expert that they need to be going forward. So I think this whole idea of enlist really leads us as a result to this concept of it being very important for us to get in front of the strategy that a CLO has to be able to articulate, and that the ops team is going to be critical for. Because, most of the legal issues that come up before a company that are about the content of the legal work may have strategic elements to each case, but the strategy for the legal department is not about any individual case or any individual matter or any individual kind of or separate kind of practice group within the company. It's about how the department's going to return on the kind of value that the client is expecting and be able to help the company advance its goals. So the ops team is now in a position to not only offer the key, but also to help write the strategy for a department so that they can talk about things like we are looking at ways to deploy technology and automation to move these kinds of processes more efficiently. Or we are developing a knowledge bank that will allow us to empower people within the company to bypass going to lawyers for certain kinds of issues and self-serve those kinds of matters for themselves. Or we are now looking at ways that we're going to manage projects so that we're better spending our time internally, as well as getting more value from outside resources like law firms that we're paying for. This kind of strategy has to do with the way the department is run and not the way individual cases are going to turn out one after another. So I think a lot of what you're seeing the ops team able to offer the GC is that ability to take the key of what these skills are and how it is they can show these kinds of skills in the C-suite. They give them the ability to take that strategy and start to develop it so they can articulate the mission. And then they and you can engage not only executive leadership in the company, but the entire team in the law department in seeing how operations can help them move forward toward those goals.
And really, a huge part of it is just understanding what is a priority for your general counsel or chief legal officer. We've been calling it CLO, but just for anyone on the call that isn't familiar with that acronym, it's a chief legal officer or general counsel. We had a question on that. I wanted to make sure everybody was clear. So understanding those priorities and how you can help your CLO look good in front of the business team is a huge part of understanding their needs. So what kind of ideas, practices, or tips can you share to enlist, engage, or empower chief legal officers to become the leader of the ops team? What do they need?
Well, I'd start with what's on this slide as your overall focus and the overall narrative that you can share with the GC as a way to start kind of framing some of these things that we'll talk about now as some particular tactics. So you want whatever you're doing to be promoting the idea that you've got the right people doing the right work, the right way, at the right time to deliver the right result. And in order to start thinking about how you can start to take that strategy and weaponize it, if you will, through your ops function, let's talk first about what it is that I think you have to do as a foundation, which is make sure that what it is that you are helping the CLO do is engaging with the business team to assure that what it is that the law department is doing and how it is that they're engaging their legal ops is aligning the initiatives of the law department with the client's needs and current business mandates. So that I always think of as saying simply, you need to start listening. Too often lawyers in their practices, and especially in the way that they are used to conducting themselves in their client or in the case of legal departments, customer type relationships within the company, is in the business of telling them what it is they think is going on and what it is they think should happen. The alignment process is one where you need to understand what the client's needs are, and that only happens when you go out and you listen to them. That could be by surveying, for instance, with some much more meaningful kinds of surveys than those yearly client satisfaction. Hey, how we doing? Give us a 1 to 10 on, this kind of thing or that, but that digs in a lot more into what it is they're working on and what it is the law department can do better or differently. But it also could be involving things like interviews. These are all things that ops teams can bring to the CLO, can coordinate with the CLO to help the CLO not only reach into the company to get those kinds of answers and to hear what it is that clients want, but to make sure that the strategy that you start to develop with them then is not only based on what it is that lawyers think is important, but perhaps much more importantly, what clients think is important. And that's an ops team opportunity and prerogative to get that kind of process going where those kinds of reports can come back. So that's a first one. But then the next thing is to help the GC figure out how to interpret that data. So let's say you get back from a lot of different people, either through surveys or through the kinds of interviews that might happen, and you're now working with the GCs on figuring out how to make that data actionable, if you will. Now you have to start sifting through and helping the GC set priorities and frame them. Note that what you're doing now is you're participating with the CLO, if you're having these conversations, in a matter where you're becoming indispensable to not only what they think about as the client need and how it is that the team will address it, but now how it is that we're going to implement that within the department and set a strategy and a frame for how this work can be done going forward. So, maybe another topic would be to take this the next step into the desire for better resource planning. And man, is resource planning going to be a big issue in the coming months. I think no matter what kind of industry you're in, even if you're in an industry that's one of the fortunate few that's actually doing as well or perhaps even better in this pandemic. I mean, if you're the GC for Zoom, you're probably not in a company that's worried about whether you've got an opportunity in the future to be doing business. But perhaps if you're in an industry that's harder hit, hotels or travel or other kinds of things, you're going to be facing this. And right now, we can all recognize that our 2020 budgets were pretty much already set. So you may have the ability to go in and say, how are we going to take the resources that are currently allocated, that haven't been clawed back, that we may not see in the next budget cycle, and get some stuff rolling right now so that we can prepare ourselves to not only be addressing all of the needs for agility and the technology needed for remote work to continue, and whatever it is that's going to be the coming priority for our business people in our new strategy, but we're also able to put that into play with the resources we have in our pocket. And a lot of GCs are just not used to budget planning. If they've worked in law firms where budgets, as we all well know in the in-house world, means we've made an estimate and we'll tell you when we get to the point where we just need to come back and ask you for more money. They've never been seen as sticky. They're just some kind of guideline that you spend to until you have to go back for more money and authorization. That's not the way it works in-house. So that resource planning is a great way to be giving the CLO the kind of power that he or she needs in order to be articulate about not only what they're going to do, but how they're going to spend the precious resources of the organization to get the company aligned and ready for what's next. And part of that, of course, I think, I'm sorry, Heather, did you want to jump in?
Oh, no, I was just going to say, whenever you can bring strategic information to the GC about how to save money, I think that put that in the top of your meeting request, and that probably will get you in the door, right?
Oh, yeah. And for you to be able to say, as the person supporting the GC, that your presentation that coming back to the board for the legal department is how we're going to do less law for less money, but provide more service. Ding, 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 winner, winner, chicken dinner. That's what everybody, would like to be able to have their GC saying. We all know how to put that presentation together. It's not an issue of saying we'll do nothing and cut the budget. It's an issue of saying we're going to figure out what we're going to spend on whom to make sure we've got the right people doing the right work at the right price at the right time. All those kinds of things, again, that aren't about spending more. They're about understanding how to use ops to spend less, or how to use ops to multiply the impact, or how to use ops to get it done in a way that gets it out of the legal department and into the world of the client to be able to self-serve. So all of this relies obviously on data. And so that's what's up on the slide right now, is this sense that you need information, you need data to be able to make these points, to put the budget together, to have the framework. Who's the person or persons in the department who brings the data to the GC to make these cases? It is you, my fellow ops people. We all know you're the holders and the empowerers when it comes to data, which is a concept and a buzzword for a lot of lawyers, but something that's really actionable opportunity for the ops team to bring forward. And I know that we're getting shorter on time, so I'm just going to briefly say at this point that the last thing I'd bring up for our talk right now is to say that this allows you to talk about two different buckets of data in the future. Right now, I think most GCs and most legal teams, and certainly most op teams, are focused on data that helps better manage the way the department does its work. And bravo, that's where we are and what we should be doing. But you can start to introduce to the GC an important concept that they are beginning to understand better as their companies are going much more digital, which is that second bucket of data that ops people can bring forward, which isn't about the management of the business function of how service is delivered, but is rather data that can help the department make better decisions with clients about how matters should be handled. Data that comes back that says things like, we've assessed what happened in the last 27 of these kinds of cases we've had in the past. Here's not only what they cost or how we can best staff them or which firms might be best deployed to do them, but also what we may know about when we should settle, or what it is that we should be looking for as the result, or how it is that we should perform this work in order to make it most likely that this kind of result will happen. This is data that most departments have had no experience in bringing forward, and the ops folks out there, as they start to get further into the data practices, are going to make their GCs superstars when it comes to being able to say, we're looking at what it is we know about how legal has been done here, has been done elsewhere, and it's helping us make more informed decisions about what we should do as a company in this matter in order to get the best result.
Wow, that time went by really, really quick. I think we're at our end, Susan. So I want to thank you. We have so much more to share, but believe me,
and the slides, because people can get at them, have many more tips like this one, and there's several more after that, so people can come back to them later and look at them. And if they've got more questions, you got my numbers, and everybody's welcome to jump into this conversation, because I'd love to hear what everybody out there has to say about these things too.
Sure. Yeah, she's going to provide the rest of her slides with all the tips. And so we'll make sure you get a copy of the presentation after the session. So thanks again so much for your time, Susan. I always love talking to you.
Oh, thank you, Heather. And thanks to everybody at ALM and Corporate Counsel for putting this together, the Law.com network. I love being able to work with y'all. And it's a privilege and a wonderful honor. Thanks.
Thanks, Susan. Okay, so now I'd like to pass the second part of our keynote presentation with Ajay Shankar, the CEO of Everlaw, to Kelly Nash.
Great. Thanks so much, Heather. Hello, everyone. My name is Kelly Nash, and thank you all for joining us today as we kick off this week's Legal Operations webcast series. For the remainder of the hour, we are going to cover smart collaboration, why creating a shared space matters in disruptive times. And as Heather mentioned at the beginning, this presentation is brought to you by Everlaw. So before we launch into the actual presentation, Everlaw would like to ask everyone several polling questions to gauge where you stand today and to make this session interactive. So as you can see, I'm pushing out slides with a few questions, and if you can take a moment to mark your answer for each, it is much appreciated. The first question we have here is, how is COVID-19 impacting your company? And you could just mark one of those square boxes and then hit submit, and you are able to select more than one answer here. We'll just give everyone a few seconds to read through and make their answer choice. We have no impact. It's business as usual. Employee productivity is lower. Employee productivity is higher, or it's more challenging to collaborate with remote teams and external partners. And let's advance to our responses. So we have here almost a mixed response, but overwhelmingly everyone is saying that it's more challenging to collaborate with remote teams and external partners. Definitely a challenge that a lot of people are feeling. It's a tough time. We have the second highest response being employee productivity is higher, which is actually a great thing, great bonus. And the next highest response is there's no impact. It's business as usual. So that's also, I guess, a positive note too. Okay, so let's advance to the next question, which is, how is COVID-19 impacting corporate legal operations in your company? Stalled projects, it's causing budget freezes or cuts, preparation for new investigations or litigation, or there's no change, same priorities as before. And again, here, please feel free to mark more than one answer response if it does apply. And I'm sure the answers that are checked are really dependent upon, the industry that you're in and the services and products that you provide. All right, so let's go ahead and advance to see how everyone has answered here. All right, just over half saying no change, same priorities as before. I guess that's a good thing. And then the second highest response is stalled projects. Just under half stating that. We had just over a third coming in saying budget freezes or cuts, and then just over 18% choosing preparation for new investigations or litigation. That's great. Okay. The next question here we have is, how does your organization manage the process of e-discovery? Is it in-house, via outside counsel, via a service provider, or is it all outsourced? Give everyone just a few moments. Okay, let's advance. Okay, so sort of a split response between in-house and outside counsel, 40% choosing in-house, just over a third, 36% choosing outside counsel, just over 13% selecting service provider, and 9% choosing all outsourced. It's great information to have. Thank you. All right, and for our final question we have here is, how do you collaborate with outside counsel, HR and IT, paralegals, service providers, and other stakeholders on investigations, litigations, or compliance projects? Is it via chat, email, phone, e-discovery platform, or another tool? And again, you can choose more than one option here, as we realize that more than one option could potentially apply for sure. Okay, let's go ahead and see our responses. Okay, 100% choosing email. We'll turn to AJ to kind of interpret that response in a second. But we also have here 77% choosing phone, just about a third saying chat, just over 16% selecting e-discovery platform, and just over a quarter selecting other tool. All right, great. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for your participation here. Your responses will definitely help to drive our conversation today. And without further ado, here to discuss the value and methods of effective digital collaboration in an increasingly complex world is AJ Shankar. AJ is the CEO and co-founder of Everlaw, a cloud-based litigation platform that enables teams to collaboratively investigate issues more thoroughly, uncover truth more quickly, and present findings more clearly. AJ is a technology entrepreneur with a PhD in computer science from UC Berkeley and an AB in applied mathematics, computer science from Harvard University. So AJ, it's great to have you here today. Thank you so much for joining us. To get us started, can you maybe give us your thoughts on the poll results and how our audience has answered those 4 questions?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks again for having me. Really excited to have this conversation today. The poll results are fascinating. The good news is that people are finding ways to continue to work, which is very promising, right? Even increased productivity is wonderful to see. I think, the notion that I want to highlight is just the complexity of what you're dealing with now, right? The different ways in which you communicate, the different stakeholders, right? The different mediums you're using. Those are all things I think I'd like to touch upon today as we think about, especially as we're kind of forced to work in a more remote environment, how do we find the right way to communicate so that everyone is on the same page? So excited to dive into that today.
Excellent.
So let me jump into,
yeah,
thank you. So let me jump into, kind of my thoughts on collaboration, right? What I want to talk about, right, is how collaborating the right way is essential for corporate legal operations, and also what I mean by smart collaboration. Right? What does that mean? And so when you think about it at a high level, right, the world is growing more complex year over year, right? The era of Renaissance women and men is over. There's so much more to know. Experts are highly specialized in different domains, and there are more stakeholders than ever before. All right, so executing on any outcome requires bringing all of these things together, which is a really complex process, right? So let's take a look at the law. Even before the pandemic, there have been forces in motion driving change and complexity in corporate legal departments. A recent Deloitte report indicated that a variety of internal and external factors are driving a shift in corporate legal ops, from being asked to do more with less, the need to become strategic business partners, to dealing with rising costs of legal services. In-house teams are being required to operate in a more complex environment than ever. So I believe that these challenges are solved in part with better communication. So through our work at Everlaw, building a collaborative platform for litigation, investigation, and compliance, we've learned a lot about how our customers, from law firms to state attorneys general to global corporate legal teams, face increasing complexity and work more collaboratively to overcome their complex challenges. In-house and outside counsel, for instance, so nominally on the same side, often feel a bit at odds, right? With neither side having enough transparency to fully trust the other. With increased collaboration, however, they can renew their trust in each other and yield better outcomes. Communication that we see on the platform includes everyday stuff too, right? So GCs, AGCs, contract attorneys, and paralegals, lit support staff, IT, the boardroom and the rank and file, deponents, and more. A 2019 Gartner survey found that 64% of general counsels are giving guidance on unfamiliar business opportunities and risk areas. Collaboration in a multidisciplinary function is essential in understanding those business opportunities and risks and providing informed guidance. And so the upside here is I think legal operations professionals should consider how collaboration is integral in the face of increasing complexity, right? And that was just in the last few years. Now, if you think things are even more different, right? The world is responding to COVID-19 with collaboration. In this particular case, the World Health Organization has created a coalition of scientists, physicians, funders, and manufacturers to help speed the availability of a vaccine, right? That's the global stage. And then meanwhile, while that's happening, the professional landscape has changed dramatically as well, right? In less than 3 months, the pandemic has radically increased the need for collaboration. As a result of shelter-in-place measures, corporate guidelines, and individual safety decisions, companies have transitioned to remote work operations. Gallup data from 2016 showed that 42% of the workforce worked at home some or all of the time. Now, this percentage has risen significantly as most non-essential employees are working from home. So with the likelihood that this trend will continue into the near future, perhaps until a vaccine is discovered and maybe beyond, the pressing question to ask is, how can we better help these teams become more successful collaborators? So this is where I want to dive into the meat of my talk, right? MIT professor Michael Schrage argues that successful collaborators don't just work with each other, they work together through a shared space. Shared space, whether physical, virtual, or digital, is where collaborators agree to jointly create, manipulate, iterate, capture, and critique the representations of the reality they seek to discover or design. This holds true for collaboration around products, processes, services, songs, or the exploration of scientific principles. Shared space is the essential means, medium, and mechanism that makes collaboration possible. No shared space, no real collaboration. He goes on, James Watson and Francis Crick didn't do a single experiment on their way to discovering the double helix and winning the Nobel Prize. But the shared space of their helical metal models proved indispensable to their collaborative success. Wilbur and Orville Wright pioneered wind tunnel designs and tests as shared space for flight design. Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs, and then Johnny Ive, relentlessly prototyped digital devices like obsessive perfectionists. They all had a medium in which to collaborate. So I think the question for us is, well, what's the shared space for collaboration in legal ops, right? How do you collaborate as legal professionals? Here, I'd like to define what I think are the 5 key characteristics that constitute a true shared space. Whatever your role or use case, I hope these resonate with you. You can adapt these to your work environment and seek out the right medium or demand it from your vendors. Of course, we've at Everlaw spent a lot of time thinking about collaboration, so we think we've created the right shared space for our domain, litigation and investigations. So a bit shamelessly, I'll argue these key characteristics with examples. I'll augment them with examples from our collaborative litigation platform on Everlaw. So again, I believe that there are 5 principal components of a modern shared space for collaboration. These are speed, convenience, security, breadth, and inclusivity. Let's go through them one by one. As I'm going through them, I'm going to give you some examples. And of course, if you have any questions or comments, please submit them. And at the end, I'll try to address anything that comes up. Okay, so the first thing here is speed. Business and life move faster than ever. Communication just has to keep up. Waiting for the message to arrive should be a thing of the past. And this goes not just for mails and messages, but live real-time collaboration on work products. A true shared space must transmit communications rapidly. It should feel as instantaneous as talking to someone in real life. Here, let's get this video going here. Okay, here we go. Here you can see 2 people collaborating on a legal document, working at the same time on different parts. Speed isn't just being able to send your revisions back super fast. It's letting all your collaborators make the revisions at the same time together. The second big question is convenience, right? How easy is it to collaborate? How much friction is involved? An example of high friction is having to, say, export a document to PDF from your online platform, attach it to an email, and send it to a recipient. Such a model inhibits the free exchange of information and ideas because it's just a pain to do. A good shared space reduces the friction of collaboration by ensuring that collaboration is always in close proximity to the work product. Here's an example of low friction, convenient collaboration. This is a predictive coding model on Everlaw. There's a lot of information here. Document predictions, statistical holdout sets, historical performance. It'd be very inconvenient to have to extract this information to share it. Instead, the user can share it within the platform, and the recipient can receive that message also within the platform, with neither of them having to disturb their workflow. That's convenient. And so this is particularly interesting to me when you think about the different mediums of communication everybody's using. Think about perhaps the friction involved, depending on what you're trying to share. For some things, email is a wonderful, perfect communication medium. For other things, it's less convenient. The third one is security, right? Security is essential, especially in our industry. With the rise in hacks and exploits, collaborative shared spaces need to be secure for the participants to feel comfortable using them. And security goes hand in hand with the rest of these components. For instance, in the above example of exporting a document to PDF and then attaching it to an email, like you probably do right now, not only is that inconvenient, it's insecure. That document now resides on the recipient's potentially insecure computer with no way for the sender to control access. That lack of control inhibits the sender from saying, effectively, compromises the message, right? Or inhibits the sender from conveying something potentially important because of the insecure channel. You don't feel comfortable expressing everything you want to express. So a good shared space ensures that collaboration is secure so that senders and recipients can communicate confidently. The third component is breadth. The fourth component, my mistake, is breadth. If the opportunities for collaboration are too narrow, the shared space isn't really a space. It's a lane, a channel. And our running share a document example, a major step forward from exporting to PDF is to allow users to share a document from within the platform. That makes sense. It's great progress, and some platforms do that. But as soon as a user wants to share another bit of work product that's not a document, in our world, that might be a search, a binder, a review assignment, a timeline, a draft of a motion, and more, and they don't have the means to do so, they'll have to leave the space to collaborate, and thus will be less inclined to collaborate at all. A true shared space has room for collaboration on all the work product and workflows you need. You can share anything, whether it's an assignment, a search, a binder, a piece of work product. That breadth ensures that no communications have to leave the secure shared space. The fifth and final of the dimensions that define what I think are a great shared space for collaboration is inclusivity. What does this mean? There are a couple ways to frame this component, and a common one is exclusivity. How can you make sure that people are only seeing the communications they're supposed to see? In other words, is there sufficient granularity to specify exactly who should see what? Can you restrict permissions and access appropriately, like in the screenshot where you can see there's a very detailed granular list of who can do what? And that's a fine place to start, but I think it's too narrow-minded. There's a more expansive way to think about it. In a true shared space, people are using shared knowledge to do their jobs better and help others do theirs better as well. This is not a violation of document access rules. This is just an inversion of the normal need-to-know paradigm common in law. We think the best shared spaces are inclusive. They allow teams to use all the information appropriate for them to access to work better together. So imagine an in-house attorney, a JD, with domain experience and thousands of reviewed documents under his or her belt, being able to understand an overall case strategy, right, and adjust his or her review analysis to match. Or general counsel working on a motion and sharing it with her team saying, hey, I have plenty of evidence for point A, but I need more for point B. Go find it. or even in-house and outside counsel collaborating together on a timeline. Let me get this timeline. Here we go. Having a little trouble in moving to the next slide here. Okay, here we go. Yeah, so this is an example of folks collaborating together on a timeline instead of recreating each other's work. This is, again, an opportunity to increase trust between the two parties. It's a great shared space can provide all of these things, right? It can change a reactive process to a proactive one as folks on the same team work more closely together and feedback loops tighten. I believe that teams that work towards inclusivity rather than exclusivity will be happier with a shared mission, more nimble, and more effective. All right, I'm still struggling to get these slides up here. If anyone can help me out, that would be wonderful.
AJ, while we're working to resolve the technical glitch here, we do have a couple of questions that have come through. I don't know if you want to tackle those now while we have a minute, or would you rather hold them to the end?
Why don't I finish up with my finishing thoughts? I'm almost done, and then we can jump into them. There's just a slide or two left, so while we figure that out, I can. My general point was, we've covered these 5 key characteristics. So as we're all trying to navigate the challenges of remote work right now. Collaboration is going to be critical for success. With the right shared space, one that's fast, convenient, secure, comprehensive, and inclusive, we're empowered to succeed, right? So what I would like to tell everybody is, find that space for whatever your particular subdomain of the law is. You'll be better prepared to handle the current environment, and you might even find that you work better together when you're back in the office. So that was my general thesis. Happy to dive into the questions that came up, and we can go on talking. If we can, no need to get the slides perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. We do have a few minutes left. So the first question that has come in is, how does being cloud-based enable smarter collaboration?
That's a great question. Yeah, I think it really comes down to, when you think about ticking off the boxes here for what a good shared space is, a good cloud environment will provide many of those things for you, right? It'll provide speed because it's going to scale to whatever your needs are rather than having to deal with an on-premises installation that's provisioned to a certain capacity. It's going to be convenient in that it's accessible anywhere to you. So if you think about, whether you're at home or at work, are you trying to get through your VPN or not? You don't have to worry about that anymore. Whether you're on the go or on a plane, you can get it. That's the thing of the past, but maybe a thing of the future. You can get to it in any which way. And again, really good cloud environments are very secure. They're hardened in a way that on-premises software, not always is, which we've seen kind of tragically with the spate of recent security breaches at law firms and legal institutions. And so again, in those couple of ways, I think it really sets the stage for some of the critical components of a good shared space. The rest of them, so things like breadth and inclusivity, are more at the product level, right? But at least you get kind of those 3 things within a well-engineered cloud environment, which really gets you going more than ever when you're working from home.
Excellent. Yes, we do have a couple more questions here, and if anyone does have anything they want to ask of AJ, please feel free to enter it in the Q&A widget on your console. The next question we have is, how does the platform securely manage communications between in-house and outside counsel?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this is something that I found really fascinating, right? You have 2 parties that are nominally on the same side. Everyone wants to win the matter, right? They want to win the case. The reality is the relationship is a bit more fraught, right? For whatever reason, there's a bit of tension. It could be that outside counsel, gets things lobbed over the wall. They're not sure what in-house counsel has done, so they might redo some of the work. In-house counsel is maybe saying, hey, why are you billing me for stuff I've already done, right? There's just this lack of transparency and clarity, which is no one's fault. talking to both parties, we know both parties want a better relationship. It's just tough to do with existing tools. When your band for communication is narrow, when it's email, right? It's hard for these parties to see what's going on. So, one of the things we do is we brought in that aperture, right? So, as I said, you can share almost anything on the platform with anybody. You can see things like a timeline view of your hot docs. You can build out a case strategy doc or prepare for a depo, do a live deposition live on the platform. Handle your custodians. All these things are done with kind of purpose-built tools, and that allows the teams to have a lot more clarity on who's doing what and a lot more confidence that everyone's on the same page, right? So in-house has done some pre-work before saying, hey, we need to bring in outside counsel. They can share that directly with outside counsel. They can go kind of consume that information in the same space. They can work together as collaborators. And that is really, really valuable, right? So both parties are working, again, together. And that, again, breeds a lot of trust and strengthens that relationship. So it really comes down to making sure that the space is able to convey kind of the range of your work product, right? Not just something you can email, but everything you've built in a medium that's designed for that work. And in our case, this is very specific to litigation. So we have story building tools, timeline tools, as I said, deposition, evidence tools, all those other tools that make it easy for the two parties to kind of align on what they've done and what they need to do.